Why do Baku and Genn have the cost and stats that they do? Regular viewers on my channel know that I often speak about these two cards, but I have not talked much about the numbers on the cards themselves. The first glance at these cards is quite revealing, even to inexperienced players. The cards suck. A 6 mana 6/5 is a crippled Boulderfist Ogre, and a 9 mana 7/8 is worse than Nozdormu. So they're both useless, right? Well, not so fast. Having a bad card in hand is still better than having no card in hand. See examples in Drygulch Jailer, Firefly, and Witchwood Apple. Point being, using these below average cards doesn't spell automatic doom, and as such Baku and Genn both still have some amount of value. With that in mind, let's look at these two cards in regards to the decks that they're placed in. Even decks are typically mid-range decks, taking advantage of an easier to use hero power to maximize the mana spent each turn. This is because the 1 mana hero power allows the deck to spend its mana efficiently, which is very important for a mid-range style. Odd decks meanwhile come in two flavors. Aggressive odd decks use 1-drops and their hero power to try and overrun their opponent quickly, while control decks try to use the boosted hero power as much as possible to maximize its value. For both of these deck types using odd cards, Baku the Moon Eater sticks out like a sore thumb. In aggressive decks, drawing Baku is practically the equivalent of not drawing a card at all. This is because a 9 mana card is hard to play. It requires surviving until turn 9, and then using a whole turn to play it. Aggro decks are unlikely to even reach turn 9, let alone spend a turn playing the card. Control decks don't appreciate Baku either, since 9 mana cards take the entire turn to adequately use. Any cards that cost that much would normally be expected to be a core part of the deck's strategy. With Baku, that's not possible, since she's just a plain old 7/8 minion. Also, side note, the exact cost of Baku further alienates her in these decks. Spending 9 mana leaves you unable to use your hero power, and any 1-drops you might have, you are likely to have spent in previous turns. This means that even at 10 mana, Baku has to go onto the battlefield alone. Back on topic, mid-range decks are less picky than aggro or control decks, since they are slower than aggro but not as combination focused as control. While the best mid-range decks use the best of these cards, lower ranked players can still succeed on a budget by using more mediocre cards, such as Vicious Scalehide and Amani Berserker. High tier decks using Genn can likewise use these cards, since Genn's hero power boost promotes a mid-range style, Genn's condition limits how many cards can be drafted, and mid-range decks can still work so long as the cards used are acceptable. With that in mind, let's look again at Genn's stat line. Compared directly to Savannah Highmane, the Beast clearly has longer lasting and more flexible applications, but the result in immediate stats is identical. A 6 mana card with 6 attack is also quite powerful specifically in mid-range decks, since it's around turn 6 that you should be planning to make a push for your opponent's face. This makes it such that Genn is actually acceptable, in stark contrast to Baku. This is inherently interesting. While both of these cards are terrible in terms of stat line, Baku fits into decks that distinctly cannot tolerate her presence, while Genn fits easily into mid-range. This subtle difference shows a key point in the design of these cards. While both are annoying to draw, one is much less so. Did Blizzard purposely design these cards this way, to allow for mid-range even decks to have less of a crippling weakness than aggro or control odd decks? Yes, I believe that's exactly what occurred. While control decks can still exist without using either Genn or Baku, and mid-range decks deem Genn an acceptable risk, aggressive decks must accept the weakness that Baku the Moon Eater is even worse to draw than Patches.